President Donald Trump announced a plan to build a missile defense system called the Golden Dome on May 20th, 2025. The system is intended to protect the United States from ballistic, cruise, and hypersonic missiles, and missiles launched from space. Trump is calling for the current budget to allocate $25 billion to launch the initiative, which the government projected will cost $175 billion. He said Golden Dome will be fully operational before the end of his term in 3 years and will provide close to 100% protection. Several countries, including China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, have been developing missiles over the past few years that challenge the United States' current missile defense systems. These weapons include updated ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, and new hypersonic missiles. They have been specifically developed to counter America's highly advanced missile defense systems, such as the Patriot and the National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System. For example, the new hypersonic missiles are very high speed, operate in a region of the atmosphere where nothing else flies, and are maneuverable. All of these aspects combined create a new challenge that requires a new, updated defensive approach. Russia has fired hypersonic missiles against Ukraine in the ongoing conflict. China parades its new hypersonic missiles in Tiananmen Square. So it's reasonable to think that to ensure the protection of its homeland and to aid its allies, the U.S. may need a new missile defense capability.
Such a defense system requires a global array of geographically distributed sensors that cover all phases of all missile trajectories. First, it is essential for the system to detect the missile threats as early as possible after launch, so some of the sensors must be located close to regions where adversaries may fire them, such as by China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Then, it has to track the missiles along their trajectories as they travel hundreds or thousands of miles. These requirements are met by deploying a variety of sensors on a number of different platforms on the ground, at sea, in the air, and in space. Interceptors are placed in locations that protect vital U.S. assets and usually aim to engage threats during the middle portion of the trajectory in between launch and the terminal dive. The U.S. already has a broad array of sensors and interceptors around the world, and in space primarily to protect the U.S. and its allies from ballistic missiles. The sensors would need to be expanded, including with more space-based sensors, to detect new missiles such as hypersonic missiles. The interceptors would need to be enhanced to enable them to address hypersonic weapons and other missiles and warheads that can maneuver. Intercepting hypersonic missiles specifically involves several steps. First, as explained earlier, a hostile missile must be detected and identified as a threat. Second, the threat must be tracked along all of its trajectory due to the ability of hypersonic missiles to maneuver. Third, an interceptor missile must be able to follow the threat and get close enough to it to disable or destroy it. The main new challenge here is the ability to track the hypersonic missile continuously. This requires new types of sensors to detect hypersonic vehicles and new sensor platforms that are able to provide a complete picture of the hypersonic trajectory. As described, Golden Dome would use the sensors in a layered approach in which they are installed on a variety of platforms in multiple domains, including ground, sea, air, and space. These various platforms would need to have different types of sensors that are specifically designed to track hypersonic threats in different phases of their flight paths. These defensive systems will also be designed to address weapons fired from space. Much of the infrastructure will be multi-purpose and able to defend against a variety of missile types. In terms of time frame for deployment, it is important to note that Golden Dome will build from the long legacy of existing U.S. missile defense systems. Another important aspect of Golden Dome is that some of the new capabilities have been under active development for years. In some ways, Golden Dome represents the commitment to actually deploy systems for which considerable progress has already been made.
Israel's Iron Dome air defense system has been described as the most effective system of its kind anywhere in the world. But even Iron Dome is not 100% effective, and it has also been overwhelmed on occasion by very large numbers of inexpensive missiles and rockets, so it is unlikely that any missile defense system will ever provide 100% protection. The more important goal here is to achieve deterrence, similar to the stalemate in the Cold War with the Soviet Union that was based on nuclear weapons. All of the new weapons that Golden Dome will defend against are very expensive. The US is trying to change the calculus in an opponent's thinking to the point where they will consider it not worth shooting their precious high-value missiles at the US when they know there is a high probability of them not reaching their targets. Despite its aspirational tone, the Golden Dome raises deep skepticism in defense circles. First and foremost, the cost is staggering. A $175 billion budget might just be the beginning, and it's unclear whether Congress or future administrations will continue to prioritize it. Even the most optimistic analysts caution that such systems are rarely foolproof and often suffer from diminishing returns as complexity increases. Second, the logistics of placing weapons in space could violate long-standing treaties, such as the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which restricts the militarization of space. Critics argue that launching armed satellites could provoke an arms race in orbit, drawing in adversaries like China and Russia, who would be forced to develop their own space-based countermeasures. Moreover, while ground and sea-based systems have shown some success, space-based interceptors are still largely theoretical. Many engineers warn that heat, debris, and communication delays make space a far more difficult environment for live interception than the atmosphere.
Another concern is survivability. Satellites are extremely vulnerable to anti-satellite weapons. A well-coordinated enemy strike could knock out key nodes of the space-based shield, rendering large portions of the system useless. This raises questions about the durability and resilience of a system meant to protect against doomsday-level scenarios. There's also the risk of escalation. If adversaries perceive the US as developing a first strike advantage, that is, the ability to neutralize a retaliatory missile strike, they may feel pressured to strike preemptively in a crisis. This could make global conflict more likely. 3 years seems to me like a very aggressive timeline, but with multiple countries now operating hypersonic missiles, there is a real sense of urgency. Existing missile defense systems on the ground, at sea and in the air, can be expanded to include new, more capable sensors. Satellite systems are beginning to be put in place for the space layer. Sensors have been developed to track the new missile threats. Putting all of this highly complex system together, however, is likely to take more than 3 years. At the same time, if the US fully commits to Golden Dome, a significant amount of progress can be made in this time.
President Trump is requesting a total budget for all defense spending of about $1 trillion in 2026. So, $25 billion to launch Golden Dome would represent only 2.5% of the total requested defense budget. Of course, that is still a lot of money, and a lot of other programs will need to be terminated to make it possible. But it is certainly financially achievable. Similar to Iron Dome, Golden Dome will consist of sensors and interceptor missiles, but will be deployed over a much wider geographical region, and for defense against a broader variety of threats in comparison with Iron Dome. A second-generation Golden Dome system in the future would likely use directed energy weapons such as high-energy lasers and high-power microwaves to destroy missiles. This approach would significantly increase the number of shots that defenders can take against ballistic, cruise, and hypersonic missiles.
If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome videos.